Many years ago, it finally dawned on me, the reason during competition week we ask certain players to use the short game to find their little deficiencies and to get their game back on the hot trail again of the swing is because they can feel the little timings and pace, club face, and different angles in the short game area a lot easier than they can just hitting golf balls with a full swing. Well, using that same principle, we wondered how that would work well with different amateurs that we teach. So we did a little experiment with 30 or so amateurs, and we videotaped them like normal, and then we took them, instead of going over the videotape, right into the short game area for about 3 golf lessons. So we taught them the simple principles of the short game in those golf lessons, and then took them back and re-videoed them again, and the changes were phenomenal. We never had to share with them the full swing techniques or anything, but a lot of them improved just naturally after they understood the principles of the short game. So today we'd also like to share that same principle with you, how you can use your short game to improve your long game technique. Just alone the posture and the setup position in the short game, if we can learn that, then that will certainly reflect into the long game. So for a short game shot, for instance, let's go ahead and take a sand wedge out. If you have a sand wedge there at home, choke down on the club a little bit with your normal grip. I'm not going to talk about grip positions, and set your feet fairly close together, 3, 4, 5 inches apart, with both toes turned to the left. And almost a feeling like your knees are bent in a little bit to the left and also torqued and turned a little bit out of the way. As you set up to that golf ball with that choke down on the grip a little bit, move your hands a little bit forward. Now the posture here, the posture bend, we call this the pelvic triangle, the juncture between your thigh and your hip in here, both of these sides. A lot of people will set forward like this in that shot. Therefore, in the long game, it will really be detrimental to their golf swing. So we want you to get a good hip sit. It'll feel like your rear is kind of behind you a little bit, and setting well into the pelvic area. Knee bend very slight, and knees again torqued to the left a little bit so that your weight is somewhat on the left side. I like also to have my students understand that the sternum should be in front of the golf ball and not behind the golf ball, especially for the little chip shot to start with. So let's set our sternum a little bit to the left so it'll feel like our upper body is leaning a little bit to the left with that type of setup, and the hands substantially forward, at least forming a nice straight line down the left side of the arm and all the way into the shaft on its forward lean position. Now this setup position, along with the upper back being very flat, the upper back, typically people will round that upper back. But when you bend forward from the pelvis, we want you to bend forward so that the spine is fairly flat back here and not round. The reason for that is as you get rounder, it makes it more difficult, and the chest seems to block the ability for the body to turn. And if you can't turn on the backswing, you can't achieve path on the forward swing in your long game. Remember, this short game technique idea here is so that your long game becomes a lot better as well. So not only will you be improving your short game, you'll be improving your long game. So better posture, kind of the chest open a little bit so that your spine is flat on the back. Nice little pelvic sit, hands a little bit forward, sternum a little bit forward, and weight into the left side via the knees and a little bit of twist in that hip. There would be a nice solid setup position for posture. Before we go into the all-important body movement and how we move in the short game, which will certainly affect immediately your long game, let me address grip pressure and hand hold pressure on the golf club first. Typical person will hold it fairly decently at the start, but then they'll increase that hold and then at the top of the swing really make a very tight gripping sensation to hit at the golf ball. And we want to dispel that right now and get rid of that as quickly as we can. So let's start with a grip pressure. If 10 is the tightest and 1 is the weakest, let's make it about a 5 grip pressure. So that 5 grip pressure at the start, hands still on the golf ball, but on the golf club, but the 5 grip pressure is still a 5 grip pressure throughout the entire motion. And we want that grip pressure to remain the same. And it's very important so that your angles, which we're going to get into in a minute, the all-important compression angles on the forward swing will be achieved, but without grip pressure, it's very difficult to achieve those. So be that as it may, let's get now into the motion of the body. How does my body work? How do my knees move back and forth? How does my chest turn and whatnot? Typically, most students will move the legs quite wildly, but we want you to understand that the simple little leg movement is only a product of the upper body moving. In other words, as I move my upper body, my legs will start to come along. I don't force myself to shift to the right. I allow myself to shift a little bit to the right, as is necessary with the length of the backswing. And with real short little position with my feet close together like this, it's not necessary that I move real big during the course of the swing. So with the setup, let's do this together. Understand the left arm and right arm form a nice triangle, and across our shoulders, we're going to start our shoulder movement, and we're going to allow the left knee to move a little bit toward the right knee on the backswing, back into the right side. So let's do this together. Let's feel this. A little simple move into the right side with no collapse of the knee and no uplift of the knee either. And a little move back into the left side, allowing our knee to get taller, left knee to get taller, and the right knee to go through. And we're going to swing back and forth, working our leg position. The important area here also in the lower body is retaining the hip position, or what we call that pelvic triangle. Most people in the full swing will allow that pelvic triangle to move forward and out away from the golf ball. So we want to make sure that we keep the pelvic triangle both directions as we move back and forth. And we'll talk about impact in a moment. But let's continue to move our feet and our shoulders all at the same motion, seeming like everything is moving together, working on nothing other than the lower body movement.